Hello, friends. We are going to talk about SOPs for an appointment. And in a previous video, I mentioned that I was going to talk about shining Martin's shoes. I think it was on the side of the road or in a parking lot. I can't remember quite where, but it was on a blacktop. I do remember that. And so we're going to talk about the SOPs for going on an appointment. This is very important. You know, I've been on appointments and the seller tells me how the previous agent was late to the appointment. Really? How are you late to an appointment? Like there's a checklist of things you got to do to portray competence, and being on time is one of the first ones. So we had SOPs in my team, and the SOPs for the team were no different than the SOPs that I personally ran myself. And you know, one of the reasons why I was able to stand on anything that I asked anyone to do is because I never asked anyone to do anything that I wouldn't do. So there's that. So with these SOPs, like you can't be late. So here's an SOP, you ready? If you got somewhere that's an hour away, you show up 30 minutes early. If you got somewhere that's 30 minutes away, you show up 15, 20 minutes early. What do you do during this time that you show up early? Do you sit in front of their house and look like a stalker staring at into their windows? No, that would be weird, right? But you can't show up 5 minutes late. You can't even show up a minute late in my opinion. But you can't show up 7 minutes early either. That's inappropriate as well. 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early. So what do? You plan to, let's say it's in 1 hour away, you plan to be there 30 minutes early, right? You find somewhere down the street from their house or a parking lot or a block away, and you find a house or a ball field or something where nobody's at, and you just park your car there, you open your laptop, you turn your hotspot on, you make some phone calls, and you conduct some business so that you're essentially working on getting double paid. That's actually something that lawyers do. You know, I had a lawyer one time, and she's like, yeah, after I go to this, I'm going to call you. Well, I realized her going to the event, the person paying for her, hours worth of trip was the client that she's going to court for. So during that trip, if she calls me and talks to me over Bluetooth, this was years ago, her $450 an hour, turns into $900 an hour because one person's paying her to drive, but she's also doing my work, talking to me. So if she talks to me for the whole time, she just doubled her hourly wage. Lawyers do the same exact thing. So we're going to show up early. We're going to be productive while we're there. Then at approximately the 5 minutes early mark, now you should only be maybe 1-2 minutes away. Once your GPS, which is running right in front of you the whole time, ticks down to where it says you're going to be there 5 minutes early, that's when you now leave. And you pull up to the house. And you're going to show up 5 minutes early because you're only a minute away. So you're not going to hit a traffic jam or anything like that. None of the stupid stuff that, I need to get gas. Guess what? That was covered with your 30 minutes early thing. Right? Shoot, you can recover from a flat tire if you can change it yourself and still be on time for the appointment. So when your GPS has you showing up to the door 5 minutes early, that's when you leave. And you don't rush and fumble out the door. You grab your things. Maybe like I always carry a bag, so I would take out my laptop. It's funny because it changes through the years. It used to be like a laptop briefcase, not like a little like leather zip up briefcase type thing, and then this like laminated a presentation appointment thing. To switch from that to just the briefcase and the laptop. Then it switched to just the laptop and everything's electronic. So the iterations that it's gone through the years is kind of funny when you think about it. So then the question comes: do you pull up to the house? Do you pull up in the driveway, or do you park on the street? You got to use common sense. And if it's a house where they've got a lot of kids or extended family, say they got 3 generations of family that live with them, in a really big house, but a narrow driveway with a lot of spots down at the house, maybe park out on the street so you don't get blocked in. Like think ahead. Just like we talked about how I put an electronic lockbox plus a combination lockbox, think ahead for everything that you can and have a plan. It's why you jump out of an airplane with a reserve parachute on. You're not hoping that your main doesn't open, but you have thought ahead and you have a plan in the event that your main parachute doesn't open, so that you don't have to be quite as scared. So, have all this stuff just lined up and ready to go. So make sure you don't get yourself blocked in. Walk up to the house. You should be 2-3 minutes early. And you're going to take your time, nice and chill, calm pace. You're not rushed. You're not breaking a sweat doing any of this stuff. You're going to be super duper composed because you're at a nice relaxed pace. Think about how your mood changes when you're stressed because you're running late and you're in a traffic jam and you see the GPS timer tick up and you're like, oh, if this traffic starts moving back again at full speed, I'll be there 2 minutes early. And then 3 minutes goes by and now you're 1 minute late and you're still sitting still. Now it's 2 minutes late. And you're like, oh, I should have sent them a message 10 minutes prior to our appointment saying that I might potentially be late. Again, you avoid that chance. If you were going to be late, you should send them a message 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes even early to give them the most heads up. Why? Because you're applying the golden rule. You don't want somebody to tell you they're late 2 minutes after they should have been there. They already know that you're late. You're just reinforcing it and making sure that they have that imprinted in their head about you. You don't want that. You want positive, good vibes, So that's the premise of everything that you're doing. The more smooth and stress-free you can make every aspect of their life and interaction with you, the better chance you've got of getting hired. And these appointments, because of the marketing methods, are so in your face nowadays. Everybody's got a phone on them, and all they are is tools where everybody gets to market to us all the time. These home sellers, they're not just talking to one agent. They're talking to multiple agents. So you're always competing. And don't look at that as a bad thing, because once you get your game on point and you have all the steps set up for every part of it, the competition is actually welcome, and in fact, it makes you look good. I joke, when I got to do a deal and I feel that the other agent's maybe not pulling their weight, I want to get frustrated. But I tell myself not to get frustrated, because if every agent that I dealt with was as good or better than I was, where would that leave me in the marketplace, right? Then I would have a statistically lower probability of getting hired and getting the job in the first place. So it's what you got to deal with at the end of the day to get the job done. I don't care who does it. I just want it done. That's what I was hired to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So the story about Martin Tippett is, we got to an appointment. We showed up early, and we got out of the car. And now, mind you, I used to be in the Marine Corps, so I've mentioned that before, but it really comes into place now. We got out of the car, and the first thing I did is I give him a once over. I'm like, oh my gosh, Martin, what in the world is going on? His shoes, they were black, shoes that you would wear with slacks. I always wear the same outfit to work. That way I could spill coffee on it or get it dirty and it wouldn't matter. And, people see me the same way every time. I always have that same professional look. So I see Martin's shoes, and his shoes didn't fit the rest of the look. He was dressed nice, but his shoes were scuffed up. So I went to I'm like, hold tight, we can't go to the house like this. So I go to my car and I keep a shoe shine kit, the, black shoe polish with a little brush, and you brush it on little circles, and then you buff it off and you get a nice shine on there. So I literally had his shoes standing there. We were standing out at my car on the side of the road, and I'm polishing and buffing his shoes before we head in for the listing appointment. There was actually a time where Martin and I both had matching cars. We both got Mercedes, and we picked that car because it had the largest emblem on the hood. So when you're parked out at the street, it's an easily recognizable symbol that's associated with things like success and whatnot. So we're like, hey, let's go get matching cars. We both had matching cars. So, it was rare, very, very rare that we would both go on an appointment, but sometimes there were people I prospected to for a long, long time, and maybe it was a really hard one to get, and we needed to do a slightly different handoff than normal, so there were exceptions to it. But when you can pull up in matching cars, both dressed nice, your appointment's on point, you show up nice and cool and smooth, and you just knock it out of the park. You feel like an absolute rock star when you're doing that. You really do. The rush that you get from just crushing out, booking appointments, going on appointments, taking listings, and closing deals is one heck of a feeling. I'm not a gambler. I don't gamble. But going on listing appointments against other agents to me doesn't feel like gambling. It's just an easy decision for the seller to make. It's not a question of whether I'm going to get hired or not. I just put on my performance, and I go back to this term performance all the time, because every bit of your SOPs for your appointment, your SOPs are just about doing the same thing every time. Guys, I mentioned Joe Rogan and his stand-up comedy routine. And I bring him up not because I think he's the greatest comedian in the world, but because he's talked about it, and I haven't really heard other comedians talk about it as much as he has. But he talks about putting routine together, and that routine, fine-tuning it over the years. And when you start out, you might only be able to put like 1 or 2 minutes together, but by the time you're done, by the time you're at the end of your career, you've got 30 minutes of knockout joke after knockout joke after knockout joke. We're 15 minutes into it, ties back into the second joke that you told during your story. That's exactly what you are doing on a listing presentation, guys. Think about it. We don't know the actors on TV. We don't know the comedians that we watch, but we feel like we develop this level of rapport with them. Why? Because they are telling us stories. They're becoming the most interesting man in the room, like I mentioned in that book. Now, granted, I'm actually talking about something that's a little bit opposite of the most interesting man. I'm talking about talking, which what's that saying? They got selling, not yelling. You got to sell to them, and to sell to someone, you generally want to ask questions, whereas yelling to someone is you projecting to them. Now, in truth, you do need a bit of both, because you want to make sure that people give you the answers that you want. So you give them the answers first in your yelling portion, and then later on you ask the questions to sell to them, and they give you back the answers that you want, and that kind of completes the sales process from point A to to the close. So anyway, let me get back to the story about the SOPs. I was trying to think of whether I wanted to wrap it up or not. I think you got a bunch of good nuggets in this video. My point being, and here's the thing, I don't need to give you every single SOP and write down every single line on a checklist. We'll go to our checklist for these things good. Yes, when you're starting out, but once you've adopted it and it becomes the way that you operate, you don't think left foot, right foot when you walk. You just think, I'm going over there, I'm getting some more water, and you do it. That's how this stuff works. But by making that checklist, you're writing it down, you're committing it to memory. You're thinking about the process very actively, helping commit it to memory, helping looking for flaws and holes in the process where you might add something to the checklist or take something away, because it's getting a little too complicated, right? And then you'll put that into place and you'll use that checklist and you'll do all those things. And then you'll find out that checklist slows you down, because that's the way that you do all those things. I'll give you one more little nugget in this one, and it's do you prepare the listing presentation the listing paperwork, the listing agreement for your seller before you go on the appointment, during the appointment, or after you go on the appointment? I've actually done it all the different ways. And the way I do it now, and the way I like to do it, is to do it before the appointment. So what I'm trying now, do I sometimes put together listing appointments that end up not getting used because the person's not ready for 6 months or 8 months or something like that? Sure, that absolutely happens. But because I made that part of my template, something I got to do all the time, I have found a way to template that and be able to put together a listing agreement in like under 2 minutes. So part of the reason I've got my put it together time so low is because I've done it so many times. The other part of that is because I've looked at all the steps and put a template together so that I have what I need faster. So when you put all of those little things together, you get a faster process, So think we're to wrap it up right now. I guess that's good for right now. I hope you guys are getting something out of this. Listen, if you want me to go more into depth, I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you right now and I'm really getting you to drink water out of a fire hose. I know it's all over the place, but I've got a bit of a mission for this first 30-day period before I'm publishing this stuff live on a daily basis. And that mission is to get that foundation formed for you so that you can put it into place. Again, you don't have to have me make all of the little checklists and whatnot. I'm introducing the concept to you, and you can make the checklist. And then to bring it down real easy, do the process. And every time you do something different, write it down on the checklist. That's actually the best way to make a checklist. That way you can be sure that by the time the end of the process hit, if you've written down everything that you actually did, you will have a complete list. So the checklist, people always want those from me, and honestly, they're going to be different for everybody, and they're not hard to make. You just literally make it as you're doing the task. Thanks so much. Like and subscribe. Have an awesome day.